Welcome back to Canadian Justice, where we're discussing those pro-Palestinian encampments at university campuses across Canada and the injunction that the University of Toronto obtained to have those protests removed. Now, in the injunction decision, Joanna, one of the things the judge did was assess the content of the speech in the protest. And this was relevant as part of the injunction because the university had been arguing that some of the speech at the encampment and around the encampment was hateful, and that this hateful speech was harming the reputation of the university to have it continue on campus. Maybe you could walk us through that, give us some examples of some of that speech, what the problem that you think is with that speech, and ultimately what the judge decided.
So first, there was a lot of testimony about altercations and anti-Semitic incidents that the judge found was either hearsay, so somebody heard about it, or somebody heard that somebody heard about it, double or triple hearsay. So that's not considered to be particularly probative. But the judge does do a sort of extended grappling, almost like a scholarly grappling with things like the saying, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," which he found, can have mixed meanings between Jewish and Palestinian individuals. He also grappled with the red triangles, which are signify somebody who's about to be killed in Hamas combat videos. And the protesters' argument for this was that it just represents the red triangle from the flag of Palestine, which I have to admit I just don't find compelling at all. Seeing how it's used, on social media almost all the time, it refers to armed resistance and frequently terrorism against civilians. But the sort of last thing I'll say is that the judge does accept that there was unambiguous, what he clears straightforward incidents of hate speech just outside of the fence of the encampment. So I won't mention some of the phrases, but it's things like we need another Holocaust, deaths to the Jews, and even worse things. So just cut and dry hate speech. And the judge says, but there was no evidence to connect the actual respondents in the court case or the encampment residents to it. For me, it's clear that this speech shows that the encampment had become a moral hazard and was attracting criminal conduct. But in any event, the judge does not accept that the encampment itself was anti-Semitic, violent, or hateful.
I mean, to me, the analysis, I do think that the river to the sea, I think it can have a double meaning, and I think that some people do intend it as a genocidal call about removing Jews from a territory, which would be an ethnic genocide or ethnic cleansing of a region. But of course, it could have a different meaning, which is part of the problem, right? It veils a hateful meaning with this claim of a legitimate peaceful speech. And I think the red triangle, the inverted red triangle, the judge's analysis of that is completely naive, in my opinion, to think it has a different meaning when it seems completely just convenient that they can make the claim that it's about the flag rather than how we all know it is and see how it is used. Joanna, what do you think? Am I off base to find that is a naive approach to the speech, or is the judge
Oh,
right?
I would say it's almost willfully blind. I don't think there's any ambiguity about the inverted red triangle. No.
Josh, what do you think? What do you think of the judge's analysis of the speech here? Does it really matter if the speech is hateful? If it's outside, is that like a relevant distinction that it was outside of the perimeter of the encampment, or is Joanna onto something by saying that this encampment acted as a magnet for anti-Semitic and hateful people?
Yeah, I think so. That I think the judge was being careful not to, find that those particular respondents, the 10 people named who were inside the encampment, had engaged in hate speech, because that's a really weighty thing to find. But he did actually find that to some small degree, this was creating a risk of, altercations outside of the encampment because of the level of vitriol and hate speech that happened just outside the fence. And it's worth noting here that the encampment did have a rule that said no hate speech, because they knew if there's a lot of hate speech happening inside the encampment, that's going to look bad on them and it's going to harm their cause when they're trying to, convince regular Canadians that they're right here. And They also were really careful to, wear masks inside the encampments and to not use their real names in their messaging to each other because they didn't want U of T to be able to build a case against them that they were engaged in hateful speech. So just the evidence wasn't there, and that's partly because they were really careful to create the evidence. And,
Right.
red triangles on the outside of the
We,
encampment.
we, we've
What do you make of that?
we've got to go to break now, but we'll be right back.